Naya sadunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge vitunaya for the deliverance sadunam of the devotees vinashaya for the annihilation cha and duskritam the miscreants dharma principles of religion samstapana arthaya to reestablish sambhavami I do appear Yuge millennium Yuge after millennium Translation: to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. So we'll read from part of all of us here for us. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the following verses summarize the principles of the Lord's appearing in this material world. Quote, the avatar incarnation of God descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation, and the particular form of God who so descends is called the incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. Oma Gyan Timirandasya Ginam Ginashalakaya Chaksurimiritam Jena Tasmai Sigurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Ishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Shwayam Rupakadamayam Didanti Shvabadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So before we begin, if any of you have any cell phones, who doesn't have a cell phone these days? Any cell phone, please turn it off, because it will create some noise during the lecture. The other day I was in a big hall, I think I was in India, and I made the same request. There was about 2,000 people there, so all these phones, cell phones appeared. Ding, 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 you could hear them. So then I started speaking, and about halfway through my lecture, I had my bag here, and I had my cell phone. It was actually right here. So my cell phone went off, and because of the microphone, I was so embarrassed. One devotee said I turned 3 shades deep red. And also babies. I love kids, but there's only one speaker this afternoon, so if the kids start speaking a little bit too much, it's a beautiful day, it's a nice play yard out there, there's some sweets and things I heard out there, so if the kids make too much noise, please take them out because we get distracted, and when they're quiet, you can bring them back in. So this is a very famous verse of Bhagavad Gita. What is Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is the Lord's words, His advice, His preaching to human society. Gita means song, and Bhagavad, or Bhagavan, is one of the unlimited names for God. Just like there's one sun, but in different parts of the world they call the sun by different names. One sun, but different names. So there's one God, but He has many names. One of His names is Krishna. And historically, Krishna appeared on this planet 5,000 years ago. And part of His mission was to enlighten human society about the ultimate goal of life, which is stated elsewhere in Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Janasya. Now that you've come to the human form of life, now is the opportunity, now is the time for self-realization. It's a common phrase these days, self-realization. But literally self-realization means to understand who you are as different than this body. It means to understand the Supreme Person, the Supreme Lord, of whom we are eternal servants, Krishna or God. And what's more, it means by the time we die, by the time we leave this body, this short span of life really, by the time we die, to understand what is my intimate, loving relationship with God. This is the purpose of life. Everything else is secondary. Not that secondary things are unimportant. They're also important. You have to take birth, you have to get educated, you have to have a career and family, and grow old and have a little time to yourself in retirement. But that's all temporary. It comes and goes. The fact is that you're an eternal spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. And human life is meant for understanding that fact. So we can't get deviated by material progress and material pleasures. They're there, it's no harm, but they're secondary. First thing is Krishna consciousness. God has endowed us with this intelligence far superior to any other species of life. The Vedic scriptures are very exact. They're scientific, you could say. This movement is the synthesis of science and religion. The fact is that there's 8,400,000 species of life. The human form of life differs in that Lord is very kind. He's given us some blessing. He's given us buddhi. He's given us intelligence. We heard of Buddha. Buddha means the intelligent one, the enlightened one. So we all have a little of the Buddha in us. We have intelligence by which we can understand our deeper spiritual nature. We can understand God. And we can understand the most wonderful thing. What is our loving relationship with God? Love is actually the most important thing. If you have everything but you don't have love, you will not be a happy person. You can be the richest person on the planet, but if you don't have someone to love, life is miserable. But you can be poor, dirt poor, but if you have someone to love, life is bearable. What's more, it can even be pleasurable, it can even be blissful. I travel all over the world. There's probably not a country I haven't been in. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly. I've met the rich and the famous. I've met the unfortunate, the downtrodden. And in the downtrodden, poor countries where I've been with people who have nothing. They make, at most, $1 a day, at most. But where they have loving relationships, where the family is there, and there's mom and dad and the kids, and aunties and uncles and grandpa and grandma. There's some loving relationships they can tolerate, they can be happy, they can even be blissful. Money isn't everything. But of course those loving relationships, they're also temporary. These are the hard facts of life. Dukkalayam shashvatam, Krishna says. This world is temporary and full of suffering. So at one point all these loving relationships end, but love is something natural. It's the deepest desire of the heart, of the soul. And the most lovable person is God. He's not a light, he's not a force, he's not an impersonal concept. He's the supreme person, like the Bible says. Man is created in the image of God. So we are persons because God is a person. He's the supreme person. God is great, and we are very small. And our happiness comes in our relationship with God as a servant. That's where real happiness lies. So that we have to discover by the time we die. Ahanya hani bhutani, Yudhishthira said. What is the most amazing thing in this world? At every moment, hundreds and millions of living entities are going to the kingdom of death. But I think I'm going to stay here permanently. No, sir. Everything is temporary. So before you die, you have to know that you're not this body. You're not a Scotsman. You're not American. You're not French or German. Black, white, or yellow, man or woman. Those are only designations to do with the body. When the body's finished, those designations are also finished. There's no guarantee your next lifetime will be a Scotsman. There's no guarantee you'll even be a human being. So we have to realize the truth before we die, that we're servants of God. So to help us, God, He comes and He speaks His Gita, immortal wisdom of the Gita. The other day I was doing a program in India, in Manipur, very intelligent students in Manipur, near Udupi, near the birthplace of Madhvacharya, that great Acharya. And there was about 1,700 students in the audience, and I chose to speak from Gita because it's the classic scripture in India to speak from. And at the end I asked if there's any questions, and one boy, he raised his hand. He said, Swamiji, what is the value of your Gita in modern society? He said, this book, he said, you quoted, it's 5,000 years old. Don't you realize that mankind has made so much progress, especially in the last 300 years, in science, technology, information, communication, medicine? He said, this book, this was studied by people who lived in the forest, in the jungles, 5,000 years ago. What is the value of your book in modern society? It was a challenging book. But I was ready. That's the first time I got that question. I said, well, it depends what your goal of life is. If your goal of life is materialism, then this book has absolutely no meaning to you. But if you can take a hint from your forefathers, who are not barbarians living in the forest, excuse me, great souls, full control of the mind and senses, great thinkers, realized, sages. If you can take a hint from them, you can understand that the goal of life is not only material progress. I said life is a question of striking the balance between the material and the spiritual. I said your material education is helping you to live in this world. Our education is how to get out of this world. I said, do you want to stay here? Our spiritual master said, this material world is no place for a lady or a gentleman. Birth, disease, old age, and death. Has your science and technology stopped these things? He said, well, we wiped out smallpox. I said, then you got AIDS. Now you have cancer, and there'll be some other vicious disease. No, these are facts of life. No science or technology can change the fact. It's created like that. God creates it imperfectly so that you'll hanker for something perfect like the spiritual world. So I said, if your goal is material, this book has absolutely no meaning. But if you understand, Atato Brahma Janasya, that human life is meant for self-realization, this book is as valuable now as it was 5,000 years ago, because nothing compares on the spiritual platform. And 5,000 years from now, this book will be valuable. 10 million years, 10 billion years from now, this book will be valuable. If you understand the goal of life or something. So he shut up and sat down. And then later during the kirtan he was dancing and he ate more than anyone. And afterwards he came and he said, Swamiji, how do I join this movement? He said, I'd like to answer. So Krishna comes. God comes. Avatar means one who descends from the spiritual world. The English word incarnation is not doesn't really catch the meaning. It's hard sometimes to try, because Sanskrit's such an elevated language. Devanagari. It's the language of the gods, not the common man. Devatas, those who live on higher planetary systems, who administer this world. Just like the president has his cabinet, take care of the affairs of state, so God has his cabinet, his administration. We can't see with our tiny eyes. What can we see anyway? But the Devatas are administrating this part of God's kingdom, the material world. And they have their language, Sanskrit. It's not for common people. It's very advanced. So you try to translate it into Scottish, Irish, English, German, Swahili, Chinese. It doesn't always work. You get a close idea. So we say of those who come from the kingdom of God, we say they're incarnations. But incarnation is not a good word, because incarnation, carne, is the Latin verb for flesh. So incarnation means to come into the flesh. Reincarnation means to again come into the flesh. Dehinosmin yatade kovanam yovanam jara tatatyantaras bhaktir jiristatanamuyanti. As the embodied soul passes from the body of a baby to a boy to a youth to an old man, the soul passes into another body of death. This is not religious dogma. This is just science. These are facts of life. These are the mechanics of this world. And when you leave this body, the soul, if he's not perfect, enters into the womb of a new mother. Carne. Reincarnation. He goes into the flesh of an embryo, a new body. And he starts another chapter in the book of life. But incarnation, God doesn't come into the flesh. No. When God comes to this world, he comes in his self-same form. He comes in his spiritual body. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. Brahma, Lord Brahma enlightens us. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Out of all the Ishwaras, these Devatas, they're very powerful persons. But Ishvara Param, there's one supreme amongst all the Ishwaras. Ishvara Parama, who is that? Krishna. And then some details of Krishna. Satchidananda Vigraha. His body consists of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Vigraha. Our bodies are made of the material elements: earth, air, fire, water, mind, ether, intelligence, false ego. What is the Lord's body made of? Eternity, knowledge, and bliss. That's why with these material eyes, you can't see God. But if you awaken your spiritual eyes, with your spiritual eyes, you can see what is spiritual. Pramanjani chariti bhakti vilochanena. When the eyes are covered with the salve of love for God, when your eyes become spiritual through the practice of bhakti yoga, devotional service, then you can see Krishna. So he has a spiritual form. His body is not material. So he's not an incarnate. He doesn't come into the carne. God didn't, when Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, he didn't take birth like an ordinary living entity, forced into the womb because of past karma. He came out of his own sweet will. He appeared in the mind of Devaki, and he was transferred, rather he appeared in the mind of Vasudeva, and he was transferred to the mind, to the womb of Devaki. The mind of Vasudeva to the womb of Devaki. Like that. And his appearance was not ordinary. He didn't take birth like an ordinary being. He appeared out of his own sweet will. It is Narayana. So this is God. He comes. Time to play outside. Beautiful day. Butterflies out there. This comes as quite of a shock to Westerners, that God comes. We're familiar with the Son of God. At least that much we know. If that's all you know, that can also be enough. I am the truth, the light, and no man come to the Father but through me. So if you believe in that and you follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, we will meet you in the spiritual sky. Tadviri paripalatena paripushan sevaya upadekshati tegena karinas tattva darshana. Just try to learn these truths by approaching the Lord's representative. Inquire from Him submissively, render service to Him. The self-realized souls can give you knowledge because they have seen the truth. So Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But just as an ordinary man could have many sons, so also Lord, He's not conditioned just to have one son. He can have many sons. He does have many sons. Of course, the Son was very special. So we know the Son of God. We're familiar with different other traditions. Now people are more aware of Islam than they ever were before. Had the recent events in history not happened, of course they were unfortunate, but people may have never come to understand who is Muhammad. I had to learn a lot about Muhammad. I had to read the Quran, because I go into these Islamic countries to preach Krishna consciousness. Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, you know Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Oman, Bahrain, Emirates. So it makes sense to learn a little bit about the local culture if you go there. Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah. Yes, when I go through customs, I don't go like this. I have a wig and a mustache like that. That's a good mustache. Can I borrow your mustache? Mine just sticks on. Sometimes it falls on. To go to the countries, and sometimes they're a little skeptical. American coming in. What are you doing here? Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah. Please come. And we're not saying it in jest, actually, because, again, these are names of God. Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah. There is no God but God. We agree. And Muhammad is His prophet. So we can also accept like that. Assalamu alaikum. You take dinner with us. One time myself and my godbrother, Nrsimha-caturdasi Maharaj, we were traveling. We were going into, I think it was Kyrgyzstan. And we were going for preaching there. So we were really brave in those days. Once we got in the country, we put on these clothes. So we were traveling. This is after just after the fall of communism. So things were a little uncertain what was happening. No problem. So we were driving down the road. We were going to one city. There was one war going on someplace. We had to go around the battlefield. And we came to one, it was like a field, and there was a big party going on. So just out of curiosity, we stopped the car, and suddenly we were surrounded. And we looked, and it was a wedding. It was a Muslim wedding. So these were villagers. So they opened the doors and had us get out. I was a little tense for a minute. Who are you? I said, well, we're mullahs from India. We're mullahs, the Muslim priests. We're mullahs from India. And they were saying, oh, Mullah Akbar, Alhamdulillah. So they invited us to come to the wedding. And they were so enthusiastic, and there was no way we could get out of it. So we came, and they were sitting down at this long table, and they were all about to start the feast. So they sat us down, and we were the guests, and they were very polite people. So we will feed our guests first one big piece of meat, sheep. So I said, well, no, thank you. We're following Ramadan. You know what Ramadan is? It's that month. Like we have our Kartik, they have Ramadan, where they fast until the evening time. So I said, we're doing our Ramadan. No, Ramadan is not now, but no, in India we have different time. But still you can eat, we eat in the morning. Oh, we've not heard of that type of Islam. No, this is the original Islam. So then we didn't have to eat, we just drank some water. So they said, they saw we had some drums in our car. They said, so you will sing some songs for the wedding. I said, okay. So there was only 2,000 or 3,000 people, so there was a little stage and there was a band playing. Very good music. So we got up on the stage. It's just after communism, so bear in mind they're kind of isolated there. So we got on the stage and I told the people, we're going to sing one very nice song that we sing in India to glorify God, so please all of you repeat after me. Hare Krishna. Now repeat. Hare Krishna. Krishna, telling the mantra. So we started. Prahlad led this wonderful kirtan with his accordion. We had 2,500 people dancing, singing at the top of their lungs. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So at the end, they liked the kirtan so much that we were the special guest. Prahlad got to take off the cover of the bride's face during the marriage. And I did something, I got to slap the groom on the back or something. I said, and then we started to go back to our car and they grabbed us. No, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. You can't go. Why? We're going to go to another wedding. So like that. Muhammad has come. And different prophets have come. And they all come at different times in the history of the human race, and they speak as much as the people of that time can understand. All of those incarnations, all of those sons of God, all of those prophets, they may know in full the absolute truth. But they reveal to the public as much as they can understand. Just like if I'm a PhD in mathematics, if I'm invited to an elementary school, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16, 16, 32. I'm going to stop there, I did terrible in math. Like that. But then if he goes to the high school, some more is revealed. If he's speaking to university, if he's speaking to graduate students, oh, he lets the whole thing. So, like that. So therefore we see differences in religious traditions throughout the history of man, only because the message was being spoken to people according to their level of realization. So therefore, sometimes when people hear that God appears, this is what? We have not heard this before. No, you never heard? Sambhavami yuge yuge. Not only once he's come so many times. Ite chamsa kalo pumsha krishnashtu bhagavan swayam indriya vyakalam vidayam juge juge. All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions. But Krishnashtu bhagavan swayam, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All these incarnations appear in the material world whenever there's a disturbance created by the enemies of Indra. Who's Indra? Indra's Devata. So opposite of Devata is Asura. Ooh. Asura means the bad guys. The demons. So when the demons harass the devotees, then sometimes the Lord comes. Sometimes it's necessary. If things get really out of hand, really wacky, when irreligion becomes prominent and real religion is suppressed and no one can handle the situation, sometimes the Lord has to come himself. Just like the children. The children made some noise, so then I say to Mother, Mother, please. So she takes out. But let's say it's a very naughty boy, he's having tantrum. So I say, Prabhu. But Prabhu goes, he can't handle. So I have to get up. I've done this before. I take the child out. So sometimes it's necessary that the Lord comes. Like we read in our scriptures that 5,000 years ago, the situation on this planet was out of control. So many demoniac persons posing as kings had control over society. They're introducing adharma. We have Sanatana Dharma, and you have adharma. Like Prabhupada said, some of the rules of religion are cleanliness, truthfulness, mercy, austerity. These are the foundation of a modified religion. But when they become countered by violence, meat eating, and animal slaughter, and intoxication, and promiscuous, unlicensed sex, and gambling, and mental speculation, when that takes the upper hand, then people have to suffer for so much bad karma, life after life. So the leaders are not solving the situation. They're involved in it. So therefore sometimes the Lord has to come himself. But many times as I travel around the world, people are, no, it's not God. He won't personally come. Oh yes, sometimes he comes. No. Yes, sometimes he comes. It's hard for them to understand. We can appreciate. Just like in our Niti Shastra, Chanaka Pandit, he says, don't go to a place where there's not a clean flowing river, where there's not a good physician, where there's not a pious king, and where people are inimical towards you. He's giving advice to vacationers. Olden days, people's vacation was to go to the next village, or maybe go to the big town, Hastinapur, or Dwarka. They don't travel like we do today. But still the advice is sound advice. If you're going to go someplace, don't go to a place where there's not a clean flowing river, because water is so essential for washing clothes, for cooking, for drinking. And for brahmanas, water is very important. Suchinam, for keeping clean, performing yajna. Brahmins cannot tolerate a place where there's not fresh water, and they cannot tolerate pain either. What's in the mode of goodness? They can't. Kshatriyas can tolerate pain, but not brahmanas. So don't go to a place where there's not a clean flowing river, because then your vacation will be miserable. I know when I was a young boy, I used to surf every summer in Mexico. In Mexico, and always the problem was we would get Montezuma's revenge. Montezuma's revenge means the Americans went and they took part of Mexico. But Montezuma was one famous king. So whenever Americans go to Mexico, they get diarrhea. They say, you have Montezuma's revenge for taking part of our land. It's all from drinking bad water. Don't go to a place where there's not a pious king. If you go to a country where there's no religious freedom, life is miserable. Here in the United Kingdom, sometimes you forget how fortunate you are. Or my country, America. In our constitutions, freedom of religion is enshrined in our constitutions, in the Magna Carta of the American Constitution. We don't know. If you've ever been to a place like China, there you can't follow the religion of your choice. There is no religion. It's a communist state. There's some official church, but it's all nothing real, actually. There's no word for God in the Chinese language. I tried to preach, I say, God. You go to a place like Russia in the 1980s, you couldn't practice religion. And there's many countries like that now. The government's demoniac. If you profess to be religious, they'll put you in jail, they'll hang you. So if you're going to go on vacation, don't go to a place where you can't practice your religion. And don't go to a place where there's not a good physician. Sometimes you get sick. I often tell the story that one of my disciples in Russia, her name's Kishori. What is Kishori? Dasi. Kishori means young girl, young gopi girl. Like Radharani's sometimes called Kishori. So my disciple, she's 82, I call her Kishori. Guru Maharaj, why are you calling me Kishori? I said, no, I'm not addressing your body. I'm not concerned with your body. I'm concerned with the deliverance of your soul. And the soul's eternally youthful. Oh, she got this big smile. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I said, yes, you're eternally youthful. Your soul's eternally youthful. But Kishori, she told me, one time we were having darshan, I was speaking about the miseries of life. So she's an old woman, she lifted up her choli. There was a scar from one side of her abdomen to the other. This thick. You could see the stitch marks. Oh! I said, what's that? She said, my bad karma. She said, that's why I joined, because I was suffering so much in this world. Now I find so much happiness in this unusual way to explain the fact. Later I asked her, I said, where did you get that scar? She said, I had an operation. I had some tumor in my stomach, so they operated. I said, oh, wow. Must have been a really difficult operation. They must have given you a lot of anesthesia. She said, Guru Maharaj, in my country in those days there was no anesthesia, no painkiller. I said, well, what did you do? She said, I just held the table very tight and I screamed, bloody murder. And she said, I'm embarrassed to say, Guru Maharaj, but also I took some vodka. They operated, she had an open surgery without anesthesia. The devotees told me that actually she passed out from the pain. So I'm always afraid to get sick in Russia. I always make sure I go there like in the summertime when there's no snow, there's not so many accidents, and I take my Neosporin antibiotic ointment. I put lots of, I take antibiotics, I take, Band-Aids and whatever. And I'm always praying. How do you want to go to the dentist? I hear they use jackhammers on your teeth. So now, this is just some common, because Niti Shastra is common sense, actually. And don't go to a place, he says, where people are inimical towards you. It won't be very fun. So taking Chanakya Pandit's advice, why would God come here? Because to greater or lesser degrees, everyone in this world is inimical towards God. This is the place where people come to forget God. There's two worlds. There's the material world, there's the spiritual world. So Jagadananda Pandit says in his Prema-Divarta, Bahir Mukha, when the living entity in the kingdom of God, he becomes a little envious of God, the supreme enjoyer, he turns his face from God. He uses that analogy. Just like my mother used to say, boy, I'm talking to you, look at me. Yes, Mom. Don't look away, I'm talking to you. So when someone's speaking to you, turn your face away, it's disrespectful. So Jagadananda Pandit, he uses this, now, Bahir Mukha, we turn our face from God. We become inimical towards God. Scotland. And although people are religious, we're not fully religious. So until we're pure devotees of God, until we're ecstatic lovers of God, we hold on to some independence, we hold on to some hope that we can still be happy in this world separate from God. So to greater or lesser degrees, except for the pure devotees, the Mahabhagavata, pure devotees, everyone has a little touch of, little inimical nature towards God. Even the devatas, because they're prakrita bhaktas, they have some material desires. They're devotees, but they're holding on to some material desires. Therefore they get in trouble. Indra gets into trouble all the time. He forgets. He becomes overwhelmed with his material desires. He's a devotee. And we know ourselves, we're aspiring devotees. Sometimes we struggle with those material desires, as does any transcendentalist. The spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. Our mind says no, but our tongue says yes. Our senses say yes, and we slip and fall and make a mistake. Pick yourselves up, show some remorse, become properly situated, you become saintly again. That is the process. So, everyone's a little... So why would God come here? In the spiritual world, there's only a tiny, small fraction of a percent of living entities that leave the kingdom of God. Hardly. You can say, what is that? How small is that percentage? Unlimited, surrendered, happy devotees in the spiritual sky. So why would God come here? Where they're innumerable. What is the reason? What would he come to this Dugalayam Shashvatam, this place of birth and death and suffering, like they have that saying? What's a nice person like you doing in a place like this? What would God come here for? It's a fib. Sometimes I sympathize with the people. No, he wouldn't come. He gotta come here. But there's a nice story, one of those beer ball stories, which I haven't told in a long time. I just remembered it now, I'll tell you. To illustrate why God comes. You know, several hundred years ago, the Muslims were ruling India, and it was actually, there was social harmony. Later on, there was some politics and Hindu-Muslim riots. But in the old days, there was times when they were living nicely together, and that at one point in Indian history, there was Akbar. He was ruling North India. And he had one famous chief minister called Birbal. And Birbal was very intelligent. Birbal actually acted also like the jester. He would make the king laugh. Because king's duty is difficult. You got a lot of headaches, so much management, and problems, and war, and this and that, and taxes, and so forth and so on. So they had their jesters. So Birbal, he was Hindu. Birbal acted as the chief minister, and he was also kind of to make the king laugh sometimes. One time, Akbar said, he was a little upset, he said, Birbal, what's the difference between you and an ass? I'm tired of you. What's the difference between you and an ass? So Birbal paced 2 steps towards the king, looked up, he said, the difference between me and an ass? Just 2 steps, Your Honor. The king could have had his head, but he laughed. He said, thank you for lightening up my day, but be careful with your jokes. So, one day they were walking in a moment of intimacy in a park in Delhi. Delhi used to have so many nice parks. They're walking and they're talking about religion, because Akbar actually was quite an open-minded person. And he was interested in the Hindu scriptures. It's said that he actually went to Vrindavan to meet one of the Goswamis. Anyway, he was walking with Birbal, and he said, Birbal, what is this name of God, Allah, in your scriptures? What is his name? And Birbal said, Krishna. Oh, but there's so many gods. No, there's one Ishvara, just like in your Islamic tradition. There's one God, not many gods, one God, one supreme God. Krishna. Same as Allah. Oh, I don't know, he's same as Allah. Anyway, Akbar said, tell me something about your Krishna. So he quoted this verse, Birbal. Paritranaya sarunam vinashaya duskrita. Yes, he comes sometimes, Krishna, to deliver his devotees, to chastise the miscreants, to re-establish religious principles. And Akbar became very upset. No! This is not possible that God would come to this world. Because in Islamic tradition, as you know, they believe in God, but you're not allowed to speculate about the form of God. Rather than speculate, they say, don't think about it. So when you go into Islamic house, there's no pictures of God, there's no pictures of Muhammad, sometimes they have pictures of nature, but you're never allowed to speculate about the form of God, or that God would come here in a form. This is all forbidden. So they're very upset when you hear, oh, God comes to this world. No! Akbar said, he would not come to this world. This is not a place for God. Why would he come here? And Birbal said, no, he comes out of compassion. Out of compassion he comes. No. Just at that moment, Akbar's little grandson, one of the princes, he was only 4. He was trying to catch frogs at a pond just 50, 60 meters away. He fell into the water and he couldn't swim. And he started to go under in the pond. And, the soldiers, they yelled out, the prince has fallen into the water. So many soldiers there. And Akbar said, no, don't worry. And he took off his crown. He used to wear this heavy crown. It was all jewels. And he had this big cape, emeralds and diamonds and pearls. And took off his belt with a saber and a sword. And into the dust. Took off his heavy shirt. He took off his pants, his boots and his pants. He was in his skivvies, as we say in English. American English. He was in his underwear. He was a big man. He was taller. He was this much taller than me. Very big man. And he started running. His feet were made clout. And he ran that. He did the 50-meter dash in 3 seconds. And he jumped into the water. He was a powerful swimmer. And he went down to the bottom of the pond. And he grabbed that boy with 2 fingers. And he brought him up and placed him on the bank and slapped him on the back like, and he spit the water out, started crying like that. Perfect timing. And the boy survived. So Akbar was, soaking wet, and his underwear was hanging there, and he walked back, and all the servants came and dried him off with the towels. And put his pants back on, and then his boots back on, and his saber, and his knife, and all that stuff, and his coat, and they come and started walking. And he didn't say anything. Saying some Muslim prayer or something. So then Birbal said, now you understand why God comes. Akbar said, what are you talking about? I just saved my son from drowning, and you're saying, what does that have to do with God coming? So Birbal said, no. You see, you had the other sons were here, and there were so many attendees, and ministers, and soldier. There was one soldier 2 feet from the pond. You could have, but just to make sure that he was saved, you went in and saved him, because he was your son. Out of love, you had to go and save him. So now you understand why God comes? Because all of us are children of God. Deep down in our hearts and our souls, we're all part of one family. We're all God's family. So just as you felt so much affection for your one son, so God feels the same love and compassion for the infinite amount of souls who have fallen into this material creation. And Akbar appreciated that. He said, thank you. Birbal. Now I've understood. And Rupa Goswami has also given us this sense, this understanding. When he speaks about the incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Tashe Namaha. There's many incarnations. They're as unlimited as the waves in the ocean. He said, but this incarnation, this most recent incarnation of God, He's even more merciful than Krishna himself. Why? Because he freely bestows this love of God without discrimination. Who's qualified, who's unqualified? All over the world, in the form of this chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So he also refers to this compassionate feature of God. And this is why God comes. Although Westerners are not familiar with it, because they don't know about it doesn't mean it's not a fact. In days of yore, people thought the earth was flat. They were convinced it was flat. Did that make it right? They didn't know that the world was round. Because they didn't know something means it didn't exist. So because Western people don't know that God comes to this world, doesn't mean it's not a fact. They simply have to be enlightened to the fact. And that is our duty. Because Krishna never says he's a Hindu God. He said he's the seed-giving father of all living entities. And therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted the Sankirtan movement to go all over the world. So people could understand their eternal identity. Jiver Supoya Krishnera Nityadas. That we're all eternal servants of Krishna. You ask Westerners, who is God? He's God. No. Who's God? He's God. No, who is God? You say, here's the Scotsman. Who is the Scotsman? Which Scotsman is he? So who is God? That question they cannot. That knowledge they don't have. That is the beauty of the Vedas. Vedas is a vast body of knowledge which addresses all these details. Without knowing who is God, how you can love Him? Can you love something you don't know? The concept, the idea is right. Without the details, because the details is a sign of love. Why did you marry this man? Because his details were different than the other men. You liked the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he sang, the food he cooked. You liked the way he dressed. You liked the way he wore his hair. You liked the way he does his business. We choose a partner, a spouse, a man or a woman, because there's some details there that we find attractive. So what distinguishes God from all of the living entities? He is great and we are very small. And He's possessed of an infinite amount of personal characteristics and activities that if you hear about them, they will enchant the heart. You'll fall out of love with this material world and into love in the spirit, into love with God. We're actually meant to fall back in love with God. But you have to know His Nam, Roop, Gun, Abod, Namachintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. You know all the transcendental characteristics of the Lord. That's described. ABCs here in Bhagavad Gita, XY, Bhagavatam, Z. The final conclusion is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That was the favorite book of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The quintessence of all spiritual knowledge is there. So for those who are satisfied with a grade school education, fine. Some go on to high school. Some may go to university. Some may want PhD, just like my friend Sripalad. He was my traveling servant for some time, but he wanted education. So he went, and in 2 years he got a 4-year education because he's so smart. And now he wants masters and he wants PhD. So for those who are interested in the PhD in the science of self-realization, we have this Krishna consciousness movement. It doesn't mean that we're better than others. It doesn't mean we're the only way. But it's a science, the school of life. As much as you want to know about God, you can know. We have our Bhagavatam, 12 cantos. On higher planets, they have hundreds of cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. It all depends on how much you want to know. So here we're being enlightened about God's appearance. When He comes as Krishna, His original form, bluish black like the monsoon cloud, and the different wavy hair and beautiful eyes and garlands with bumblebees and flute and so forth. He comes and His compassion is manifested in 3 ways. We'll refer to Lord Nrsimha-Dev in that regard. Paritarnaya sadanam vinashaya paduskutam. Nrsimha-Dev was, God is so kind that if you love Him enough, He'll manifest one incarnation just for you. That's how kind God is. Nrsimha Bhagavan, He came, and God came as half man, half lion. There's so many reasons, we won't go into all the details now, we know. Lord can come in a limited fashion. So He came and He delivered that one devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, and He killed that one demon, Hiranyakashipu. And by hearing the pastimes, we become encouraged to become religious, so you could say he established religious principles. He meets the criteria of an incarnation, Lord Nrsimha-dev. And I remember one time my mother, when I first joined, she was going through one of the books and she saw the picture of Nrsimha-dev killing Prahlad's father. She says, "Is this your God? He kills the parents? He's so cruel?" My mother was a scientist. My mother was an atheist. Actually, mom. My mom, bless her soul, she was Phi Beta Kappa from Stanford University. My father used to say, he said, my mother and you, we graduated the highest honors in school. What's happened to you, boy? Sometimes I wonder, did we take the right baby out of the maternity ward? My mom, yeah, she was Phi Beta Kappa, very intelligent woman. She was an atheist. Just to show you the power of this Krishna conscious movement. My mother, I love to tell the story because, my mom. I used to bring the books home, and after she saw that picture of Nrsimha-dev, that was it. She never looked at another book for 30 years. She used to put the books in the garage on the shelf there. I used to collect all the dust and the oil like that. And I tried my best. I used to, on my birthday, I would send my mom 2 dozen roses on my birthday. "Why are you sending me roses on your birthday?" I said, "Mom, you did all the hard work. When I was born, I was just sitting there, and you did all the..." So, thanks. So we kept a good relationship. But we used to have these debates, and she was so sharp. In the beginning, she said, "Defeat me." "So grow your hair back a little bit," she'd say. "I used to tell you to cut it, now grow it back." You went from one extreme to the other. So anyway, after that picture of Nrsimha-dev, then she wouldn't read any of the books or anything. We get on the phone, "So life comes from matter, my son. Life doesn't come from life. Life comes from matter. I can show you so many scientific..." "Okay, Mom, just cool down. Just call me to say hello, see if you're okay." Anyway, a few years ago, after 35 years, I get a phone call at 2:30 in the morning. "Hello, son, this is Mom." And I said, "Hi, Mom, it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm calling you from California. I want to go to Vrindavan." "What?" Vrindavan is where Krishna appeared in India. "Mom, have you been drinking again?" Because she also had a drinking problem. "You've been drinking?" No, I haven't touched the stuff in 6 months." "Mom, I want to go to Vrindavan right now." "Mom, it's 2:30 in the morning. I'll call you back at 6:30, okay? I'm tired." "Mom, click." I was tired. I didn't know I was click. So I get up, 6 o'clock, take my shower. Oh, my mom called. I thought it was a dream. I called. The phone rings, and my brother answers the phone. "Hey, Pete, how's it going?" No answer. "Pete?" "Yeah, I'm here." "Let me speak to Mom." Silence. "No, I want to speak to Mom. Come on." I'm like the older brother. "If I was there, let me speak to Mom." He said, "Mom died 10 minutes ago." I said, "What? Mom died 10 minutes ago? Was there some accident?" No. She's had cancer for the last 6 months." "She's had cancer? Why didn't she tell me?" "No, she didn't want to disturb you. She knew you were doing your work over there in Europe. She didn't want to disturb you." I said, No, she should have told me." "Oh, why? She should have told me. Did she say anything at the last minute?" I thought maybe she had a message. "Yeah, you know what Mom said?" My brother wasn't a devotee. "I was there crying." He said, "The body's right here. I'm looking at her now. I was crying. Mom looked up and she said, 'Don't lament for me. I'm not this body. I'm a spirit soul. I'm going to Krishna.'" She died saying the name of your God. I said, how's that possible? Mom was so adverse, antagonistic to Krishna consciousness. How did she say? She was a scientist. She didn't believe in the soul. She said she was a soul. She was going to Krishna. What happened? My mother said, no, you know, she got this cancer 6 months ago, and it made a big change in her life. She's sitting out on the porch in her rocking chair, telling me how, you know, when she dies, everything's finished, and this and that. And then one day I came out in the evening, and she said to my brother, she said, but it just doesn't make sense. I just don't feel that when I die, I'll be finished. She said, go into the garage and get all those books your brother used to send me. Dust them all off and put them on the table here. I'm going to see if there's something in those books. I just don't think I'm going to die. So my brother went and he got all the books and he cleaned them off, and he said, what's that book he always used to quote from? The Bhagavad Gita. Give me the Bhagavad Gita. So he got the Bhagavad Gita. My mother was a speed reader. She read that book. He said she read it 3 times. And then she said, now I'm going to really study it. Get me one of those magic markers. So she used to underline all the passages like that. And Croft reference, he said she read the book 9 times. My mom. And she said, still the things I don't understand. She said, doesn't your brother have some of his lectures recorded somewhere? My brother said, I don't have a clue. She said, no, there's some magazine, Back to God something. Back to God something. A whole pile of them in the garage. Go get one of those Back to God somethings. So my brother found a Back to Godhead magazine. About that magazine she was. Yeah, just call this local Hare Krishna temple and ask, they'll know his name, Indradyumna something. He's some kind of leader or something, you know. Just look there and ask somebody there. My brother called the temple. Yeah, I've got a brother, you know. Anyway, it took them 3 or 4 days, but they found out my tape ministry, which was run by Sri Thakur Mahasaya. So my mom said, order everything he's got. So something like 600 tapes arrived one day in the mail. My brother was throwing them back. Don't treat those tapes like that. She said to my brother. He told me the story later on. Don't treat them like that. Put them down here. So she said, go get me one of those newfangled tape recorders. My mother was not very... My brother went and got a tape recorder. You know, those tapes and those cassette tapes, you know. The headphones. He said, you should have seen Mom sitting out all day long in the rocking chair with the Bhagavad Gita in her hands, listening to your lectures. She said, oh, now I understand. Now your brother explained it like that. She said, there's a verse here about how you accept a guru. Only to the guru can you understand the Bhagavad Gita. So, anyway, you know, I went home for the funeral. Well, there was no really funeral. We had a ceremony, and then, you know, and I saw the Bhagavad Gita. And it was, you know, every page, there was some line, there was some ask Brian, because she's going with Brian. Ask Brian this, ask Brian that, ask Brian this, you know, question that. Tape number 603, this is confirmed, you know. She had 6 months. 6 months, and, you know, Prabhupada became her guru because he convinced her that her whole life's philosophy was not correct and that she was a spirit soul. Not only did she realize Aham Brahmasmi, but she caught this hint that she's Krishna's servant, and not only that, she became a God-fearing person, but she also understood Krishna's, that personality of God. So she wanted to go there. She wanted to die in Krishna's land. And she told my brother, she read somewhere that if you're born in the Holy Land of Vrindavan. If you live there and if you die there, you go back to the spiritual world. So she wanted to go to Vrindavan and die there. That's why she called me that night. But the cancer killed her that night. So, when I got home, then I went to the funeral place and I wanted to pay the bill. It was $800 for cremation and spreading the ashes. That was her wish. So I went, and I went to the man and said, I'd like to pay for the funeral of Mrs. Titus. He said, that's okay, it's $800. Oh, excuse me, sir, he said, we've made a big mistake. A big mistake. Somehow or other, we haven't scattered the ashes. I said, that's okay. Just give them to me. He said, you don't have to pay for anything, he said. Here's your money back. I'm really sorry. I said, okay. He gave me the ashes. So with that money, I bought a ticket to India. And I took my mom's ashes. And I arrived in Delhi, and I went out to Vrindavan, and I waded out in the Jamuna River, which is our tradition, and I had that urn there, and I said, Mom, I said, I'm really happy because I was so rude that night. I hung up on you, and I feel so bad that I didn't at least say I would bring you to Vrindavan. I finally brought you to Vrindavan. I took those ashes and poured them in the river like that. So sometimes I pray to my mother. I think that, if I could be so fortunate to be able to say Krishna's name at the moment of death, because you never know. One of my best friends is a doctor, Gopaswami Das. He says most people are unconscious when they die. Like only 15% of people are actually, conscious, and even then there's drugs. He said it's very rare that somebody's aware, and like my mom was, and so she said, I'm going to Krishna. So I take it that she went to Krishna. Somehow, she didn't practice devotional service, but Krishna says, one who studies this Gita worships me with his intelligence. So at the fag end of life, at the 11th hour, my mom's intelligence, she used it in the right way, and she read Gita, she became convinced that she really wanted to go to Krishna. So sometimes I pray to Mom that, she's there, and, I was supposed to be ahead of her, and somehow I slipped behind, like a rabbit in the hare. The bunny rabbits go, there's a race, right? And the hare's going, the turtles are, and the rabbit's all puffed up and proud, okay, I'll stop here and take a little nap, and just about to cross the fence, the rabbit wakes up, but it's too late, and the turtle crosses the line, so I slowed down, and Mom speeded ahead. So that's the duty of mothers, right? Mothers are supposed to take care of us and lead us, right? Like that. But anyway, I'm referring back to the original time she saw Nrsimha-caturdasi picture. What kind of God is this? Well, you can tell me now, Mom. But this is, of course, not the original form of the Lord, but this is the feature. It's like you have your personality. These different incarnations, or you could say expressions of different aspects of God's personality. Just like you get angry. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Sometimes you have to get angry in order to chastise your children. Don't use the rod, but you can show it. But, anger is a way of putting people in the wrong sometimes. The rod of chastisement. So, Krishna also becomes angry when his devotee is offended. God doesn't take it personally, but if you offend his devotee, he will not tolerate that. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was harassed by his demoniac father, who was a tyrant to the whole universe, actually. And he tried to kill Prahlad in so many ways. So when he took that sword at the final moment to chop off the head of his Vaishnava son, the Lord appeared as half man, half lion. He was very angry. He was very angry. He took that demon on his lap and he killed him in an appropriate way. So someone can say, what kind of God is this? He's so cruel, he kills. But sometimes it's required. No one laments, we said yesterday in the manner, no one laments that if you've got a cancer virus growing and the doctor cuts you open and he takes out the tumor and he kills the tumor in some type of acid or he burns it. Oh, but what about the poor cancer? What kind of doctor is that? I mean, geez. We're a movement against killing the cancer tumors. No. Well, if there's some dangerous serial killer on the loose, and the police have to shoot out and kill him. Is anyone lamenting? Sometimes